The alien princess Lyria lived on a planet far beyond the human world. Her people were known for their intelligence, grace, and strong magical abilities. They had beautiful cities that floated in the sky, towers that reached the clouds, and gardens that glowed with colors that no human eye could imagine. From the day she was born, everyone expected Lyria to grow up and continue the royal lineage. She was raised in golden halls, trained in arts, diplomacy, and the special powers her people possessed. She had teachers from all over the planet, tutors who made sure she excelled in every subject, and servants who anticipated her every need. On the outside, her life seemed perfect. Everyone admired her beauty, her poise, and her intelligence. But inside, Lyria carried a secret sadness, a shadow she could not share with anyone. Lyria was infertile. She could not have children. This was a fact that her family, her teachers, and the royal advisors all knew, though it was never spoken aloud in public. For Lyria, the knowledge was like a heavy stone she carried in her heart. In her culture, the ability to have children was considered one of the highest honors. To be unable to do so meant that she could never fulfill one of the most important duties of a princess. Despite her talents and kindness, she felt incomplete. Each time she saw other young nobles preparing for marriage or hearing stories of new heirs, she felt an ache deep inside. She wondered if she would ever find happiness, or if her life would always be shadowed by the judgment of others. The court, unfortunately, did not make it easy for her to forget. While many treated her politely, there were always whispers. Some nobles smiled sweetly while saying cruel things behind her back. They would talk about her as if she were a problem that needed solving, or a failure that needed correcting. Some even laughed openly at the idea that the once proud princess might never carry an heir. These whispers and laughs made Lyria feel trapped in a golden cage, surrounded by people who admired her for everything except the one thing that mattered most to them: her ability to give life. One day the king, her father, called his advisors together. He had always been a man who enjoyed power and control, and sometimes he showed a cruel sense of humor. He wanted to lighten the court with what he thought would be a joke at Lyria's expense. "We should remind the princess of her place," he said with a sly smile. "Let us give her to a human. Let her feel what it is to be among those who cannot even dream of such heights. Perhaps she will learn humility." The advisors, though uncomfortable, nodded. It was unusual even by their standards, but no one dared oppose the king openly, and so a plan was formed, not as a punishment exactly, but as a mocking test. Lyria would be sent to a human, a simple man named Adrian, as if she were a gift. The king expected that Lyria would return humiliated, disappointed, and perhaps even embarrassed. Lyria was summoned to the throne room. She entered with her usual grace, her long robes floating as she walked. Her hair shimmered in the palace light, and her eyes, normally calm, now glimmered with suspicion. She had heard rumors of her father's plan but could not imagine the details. When the king spoke, his voice filled the room, echoing off the crystal walls. "Lyria," he said, "we have chosen a companion for you, someone who will teach you humility. You will travel to the human world and live among them. You are to stay with Adrian." He smiled, expecting her to be shocked, perhaps even frightened. "Do not worry. He is a simple man. He will not challenge you. It will be amusing." For a moment, Lyria's heart sank. How could her father do this to her? She had always been careful, always controlled. She had studied, trained, and prepared to represent her people with dignity. Now she was to be placed in a strange world, with someone she barely knew, someone who could never understand her life, her powers, or her responsibilities. But beneath the fear, a spark of defiance ignited. Lyria would not let this prank break her. She would go, yes, but she would maintain her dignity. She would show them all that even an infertile princess could be strong, clever, and unbowed. Preparations began quickly. Lyria's personal belongings were packed by her attendants. She carried robes, scrolls of knowledge, tools for her magical training, and a few small trinkets of her home world. She said goodbye to her teachers, who expressed both pity and admiration. "Take care of yourself," one whispered. "You are stronger than they know." Lyria nodded, not speaking because she was unsure whether to feel gratitude or anger. Her journey to the human world was unlike anything she had experienced. The transport ships of her people were unlike human vehicles. They glided silently, through space, moving faster than the speed of light, yet the entire trip felt long and lonely. She looked out at the stars and wondered what awaited her. Adrian, the human, lived on a distant, quiet colony. His life was simple but full. He worked as a farmer and craftsman, helping his community in practical ways. He had a kind heart and was known for his honesty and generosity. He had no idea of the plan that the king had devised, no idea that a princess would be sent to his home as part of a joke. When the alien ship arrived, he saw Lyria step out. She glowed faintly under the sunlight, her clothes unlike anything he had ever seen, and her presence commanded attention. For a moment he was silent. Then, as someone who treated everyone with respect, he stepped forward. "Welcome," he said simply. "You must be tired from your journey. Please come in." At first, Lyria was cold. She nodded politely but said nothing. She expected arrogance from humans, foolishness, or mockery. Instead, Adrian treated her as an equal, as someone to be listened to. He showed her the small home where she would stay, a modest place with walls of wood and warm light. It was simple, yes, but it had a comfort that Lyria had never experienced in the royal palace. The air smelled different here, fresh, earthy, alive. She could hear the wind through the trees, birds singing, and the distant sound of water. It was strange and unfamiliar, but it was beautiful in its own way. Days passed. Lyria struggled at first. She tried to maintain her royal posture, refusing to do work or chores, expecting that humans would be clumsy or unworthy of her attention. But Adrian never pressured her. He offered help when needed, advice when asked, and left her alone when she wished for solitude. Slowly, she began to notice small things. The smiles of the children in the colony, the laughter of neighbors helping each other, the way people celebrated simple moments like a harvest or a shared meal. There was joy here that had nothing to do with power, titles, or expectations. It was raw, human, and real. One evening, as she sat by the window watching the sunset over the hills, Lyria realized something extraordinary. Despite the initial shame, despite the court's mocking plan, she felt peace. For the first time in her life, she felt free from judgment. She was not being measured for her ability to bear children, for her knowledge, or her beauty. She was simply herself, allowed to exist without expectation. The realization frightened her as much as it thrilled her. She had spent her life in golden cages, and now she could see what freedom truly felt like. Even though the prank had been cruel, the human world offered Lyria something she had never experienced: acceptance, patience, and the possibility of growth. And Adrian, without trying, had become her guide in this strange new life. Lyria began to wonder if perhaps this journey, which had begun as a humiliation, might hold something greater than she had ever imagined. Perhaps in the simplicity of humans, she could find not only freedom but also something deeper: friendship, trust, and maybe even love. As the nights passed, Lyria learned to laugh again, to speak without caution, and to appreciate small, ordinary joys that she had ignored in her royal life. She discovered the taste of fresh fruits, the thrill of running barefoot through fields, and the comfort of sitting by a fire listening to human stories. With each passing day, she felt a tiny seed of change growing within her, a feeling that perhaps life had not ended for her because she could not fulfill her royal duty. Perhaps a new story was beginning, one that no one at the court could predict. The first part of Lyria's journey ended not with a grand announcement or a dramatic confrontation, but with quiet wonder. She had come to the human world expecting ridicule and humiliation. Instead, she found kindness, curiosity, and a strange, gentle hope. And though she did not yet know what the future would bring, One thing was clear. The alien princess who had once been defined by what she could not do was beginning to discover who she truly was and what she might yet become. Life among humans was entirely new for Lyria. Every day brought challenges and experiences that she had never imagined, and yet, slowly she began to feel a sense of belonging she had never known on her own planet. The human colony where Adrian lived was small but lively. People worked together, shared resources, celebrated festivals, and helped each other in times of need. Lyria observed all of this with a mix of fascination and amazement. She had grown up in a world where hierarchy and rules dictated almost every action. Here, life seemed messy at times, but the disorder had a warmth and authenticity that made it feel alive. Adrian became her guide not only to the human colony, but to the rhythms of daily life itself. At first, Lyria resisted his instructions. She was a princess, after all, trained to command and lead. Simple chores like fetching water or tending small gardens felt beneath her. She expected humans to be clumsy and unworthy of her attention, but Adrian never treated her with condescension. He patiently explained why things were done a certain way, how humans respected work and effort, and how every action, no matter how small, contributed to the community. Slowly, Lyria began to understand that this world operated on different values than her own, and she could learn from it rather than judge it. The first week was the hardest. Lyria struggled to sleep in the small, simple room Adrian had prepared for her. The bed was soft, yes, but it lacked the luxurious fabrics and precise comfort she had grown used to. The noises of the human colony, birds, children playing, neighbors talking, kept her awake at night. But gradually she began to notice something unexpected. The sounds were not unpleasant. They were alive, real, and comforting in a way that the silence of her palace had never been. She could hear life continuing outside her window, a rhythm of movement, laughter, and care that felt welcoming rather than intrusive. During the day, Lyria walked through the colony with Adrian, observing humans at work. She watched children learn to farm, elders teach stories of the past, and neighbors gather to repair buildings together. Every action had a purpose, every gesture a meaning. Humans smiled often, even in the face of hardship, and their kindness seemed endless. Lyria had never experienced anything like this. In her world, power and knowledge were measured, and kindness was often just a mask. Here it seemed genuine. She began to feel a connection to these people, even though they were not like her. One day, Adrian invited her to help in the fields. Lyria hesitated, unsure how she could contribute. But as she watched him work, she saw the joy he took in simple tasks. He smiled as he planted seeds, hummed a tune while watering crops, and spoke to the plants as if they could understand him. Hesitant at first, Lyria joined him, learning how to plant and tend to the soil. Her movements were awkward at first, but Adrian guided her patiently. "You don't have to be perfect," he said. "Just do your best. That's enough." For the first time in her life, Lyria felt free to make mistakes without judgment. Working alongside humans was tiring in a way she had never experienced. On her planet, her tasks had been mostly mental, elegant, or ceremonial. Here, labor was physical and exhausting, but it came with its own satisfaction. She could see the immediate results of her work. The soil darkened with water, sprouts began to grow, and she felt proud of her efforts. She also noticed how humans relied on each other, supporting one another when one person struggled. This sense of community was foreign to her, but it drew her in. Lyria began to spend more time observing human children. They were full of curiosity, laughter, and boundless energy. She watched them play games that required no rules beyond imagination, and she felt a twinge of longing. In her royal palace, children played with toys that were carefully controlled and guided by strict rules. Here, children invented worlds with sticks, stones, and laughter. Their joy was infectious. Lyria found herself laughing along with them, something she had not done freely in years. Their simplicity and innocence began to teach her a new kind of happiness, one that was not tied to status, beauty, or intelligence. Adrian noticed the changes in her demeanor. He saw the stiffness of royalty slowly soften into ease. The careful precision of a life spent under scrutiny began to relax. He never commented directly, but his quiet companionship gave her space to explore and grow. Lyria began to share small details of her life with him, not her royal secrets, but personal thoughts and feelings she had never voiced before. She told him about her fears, her loneliness, and the constant pressure to meet impossible expectations. Adrian listened without judgment, offering empathy rather than solutions. This, perhaps more than anything, made Lyria realize how different life could be when someone truly cared. Weeks turned into months. Lyria's initial resistance faded, replaced by curiosity, appreciation, and even affection. She learned to cook simple meals alongside humans, marveling at how much love they poured into ordinary food. She joined in community festivals, dancing, and singing despite her initial awkwardness. She started to understand the meaning of friendship, trust, and shared responsibility. For the first time, she experienced life not as a princess expected to perform, but as a being capable of feeling and learning freely. One afternoon, while walking through the fields, Lyria paused to watch a group of humans repairing a bridge over a small stream. They worked together, each person taking turns lifting heavy beams, passing tools, and encouraging one another. Lyria realized that in her world, such cooperation was rare. People acted for personal gain or status, and achievements were measured by recognition. Here, the value of work was in the effort, the care, and the way people supported each other. She felt a strange warmth in her chest, a sense that life could be measured differently than she had always believed. As days passed, Lyria's feelings toward Adrian deepened. She appreciated his patience, kindness, and understanding. He never tried to impress her, never flaunted power or knowledge. He lived simply but with integrity and courage. Lyria admired this more than anything she had seen in the royal court. She began to notice small details, the way his eyes softened when he smiled, how he treated everyone with respect, and the quiet joy he found in helping others. Lyria realized that this man whom she had expected to be a simple figure in a cruel joke was extraordinary in ways that mattered far more than titles or beauty. One evening, after a long day of work in the fields, Lyria sat by the fire with Adrian. The sun had set, painting the sky with colors she had never seen on her planet. She felt a sense of peace she had never known. The wind carried the smell of earth and flowers, and the laughter of children echoed in the distance. For the first time, she allowed herself to relax completely. She spoke to Adrian about her fears, her past, and the loneliness she had felt, despite living in a palace full of people. Adrian listened silently, offering no judgment, only presence. Lyria felt a bond forming, a connection based not on power, obligation, or expectation, but on understanding and care. Through these experiences, Lyria began to change. Her royal pride did not vanish, but it softened into humility and empathy. She learned that strength was not only in power or appearance, but in patience, kindness, and the ability to adapt. She discovered the beauty in imperfection, the value of effort, and the joy in helping others without expectation of reward. Life among humans taught her lessons no royal tutor could provide. She realized that the world was far larger, more complex, and more meaningful than she had imagined. As the first months turned into a full year, Lyria began to feel a deep transformation within herself. She laughed more freely, moved with less tension, and embraced experiences she would once have dismissed. She found joy in simplicity, comfort in friendship, and even wonder in ordinary life. The human world, once foreign and intimidating, had become a place of growth, healing, and unexpected happiness. By the end of the first year, Lyria no longer saw herself as a pawn in a cruel royal joke. She saw herself as a being capable of love, learning, and joy. She had discovered resilience, adaptability, and hope. And most surprisingly, she had discovered a connection with Adrian that was deeper than friendship. A quiet, unspoken understanding that would guide the next chapters of her life. In the human world, Lyria began to understand that life's value was not measured in titles, appearances, or expectations. It was measured in relationships, care, and the courage to embrace change. Her heart, once heavy with shame and fear, now carried the seeds of trust, hope, and something even more profound. Though she did not yet know what the future held, she felt ready to face it with courage, guided by the kindness of humans and the companionship of a man who had treated her as an equal from the very beginning. Time in the human world passed in a way that felt different to Lyria. Days blended into weeks, weeks into months, and months into a rhythm that was peaceful and purposeful. Lyria no longer felt the heavy weight of judgment from her royal court. Instead, she experienced the gentle weight of responsibility, the kind that comes from caring for others, contributing to the community, and making choices that mattered. Life among humans had changed her in ways she had never expected. She had become part of the colony. People began to trust her, seek her advice, and invite her into their daily lives. Lyria learned the names of children, neighbors, and workers. She celebrated with them, mourned with them, and slowly she understood their joys and struggles. Every day offered lessons about resilience, compassion, and the power of connection. She realized that humans, though physically weaker and simpler than her own people in many ways, possessed a strength that was invisible but profound. Their courage was in their hearts, their patience in their actions, and their love in their willingness to forgive and care for one another. Adrian remained by her side, patient and quiet. He continued to guide her through tasks, share his knowledge of the human world, and offer friendship without expectation. Over time, their bond deepened. Lyria began to notice small gestures that had previously seemed ordinary. The way he paused to listen to someone's concerns, the subtle kindness he showed to animals and children, the calm patience in his voice when teaching or correcting mistakes. She realized that these qualities were extraordinary, even more than any power or wealth her royal world valued. As Lyria learned the ways of humans, she also discovered a freedom within herself. She could laugh openly, cry without restraint, and express emotions that had long been suppressed. There was no courtly expectation to control her every action, no constant reminder of her infertility, no judgment about her appearance or demeanor. She was simply allowed to exist, and in this simple existence she began to heal. One morning, as Lyria walked through the colony, she saw a group of children building a small shelter for the animals. She paused to watch, then offered her help. At first, the children were wary of her, unsure of the alien princess who had joined their work. But Lyria smiled gently, knelt down, and began to help them tie sticks and arrange stones. Slowly, their fear turned into trust, and soon they laughed together, sharing jokes and stories. Lyria felt a deep sense of joy she had never known. The act of helping, of contributing without expectation, brought a fulfillment that she had never experienced in her royal life. Adrian watched her quietly from a distance, noticing the subtle changes. Her shoulders, once tense with the weight of royal expectations, now relaxed. Her eyes, once distant and guarded, now shone with curiosity and warmth. Her laughter was freer, her movements less constrained. Adrian knew that Lyria was discovering herself in a way that no one back home could have taught her. He had expected her to struggle, perhaps even fail, but she was thriving in this new world. Months passed, and Lyria began to feel something she had never imagined possible. It started as a gentle warmth, a subtle change in her body that she could not explain. She dismissed it at first, thinking it was a result of her new diet or the physical work she had begun to enjoy. But the feeling persisted, growing stronger, with time. Lyria confided in Adrian one evening as they walked by the river, her voice trembling slightly. "Something is changing inside me," she said. "I cannot explain it, but I feel different." Adrian looked at her with gentle concern, offering support without pressing her for answers. He knew that some experiences were too personal to be rushed. Days later, Lyria noticed more signs. Her body felt alive in a way it never had before. Her senses seemed sharper, her emotions more vivid. She found herself dreaming of new life, imagining children playing, laughing and growing. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. She had been told for years that she could never bear a child. Now, for the first time, the impossible seemed possible. Finally, one quiet morning, Lyria confirmed her suspicion. She was pregnant. The realization filled her with a mixture of awe, fear, and joy. She sat alone, holding her hands over her stomach, feeling the life growing within her. The child was a symbol of hope, a miracle that defied the expectations of her royal court, her people, and even herself. Lyria felt tears welling in her eyes, tears of wonder, relief, and happiness. She had been given a second chance, not only to experience motherhood but to redefine her place in the universe. When she shared the news with Adrian, he was silent for a moment, then smiled with deep warmth. He took her hands in his, looking into her eyes. "This is a miracle," he said softly. "You have brought life into the world, and nothing can take that away." Lyria felt a wave of gratitude toward him, not only for his kindness and guidance but for his unwavering support and belief in her. She realized that the child she carried was not only a symbol of hope, but also a testament to the bond they had formed, a bond built on trust, patience, and love. As news of her pregnancy began to spread quietly among the colony, Lyria noticed a change in the way people treated her. They admired her courage, her willingness to embrace human life, and her dedication to the community. The same people who had once been wary now sought her guidance and celebrated her presence. Lyria felt a sense of belonging she had never known, a connection to a community that valued her for who she was rather than what she could or could not do. Even so, Lyria could not ignore the reality that her pregnancy would shock her home planet. She had been sent there as a joke, a humiliation, and now she carried a child, a living testament to her strength and resilience. The thought of returning home filled her with a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. How would her people react? Would they celebrate her, or would they be unable to comprehend this miracle? Lyria did not yet know, but she understood that she had grown stronger in ways that no courtly lesson could teach. During this period, Lyria also reflected on her own growth. She realized that her infertility had never defined her worth. It had been a limitation imposed by others, a measurement of value that had no real meaning. Now carrying a child, she understood that her life was not determined by expectations but by her choices, her courage, and her willingness to embrace new experiences. She felt a profound sense of liberation, a knowledge that she could shape her own destiny. Lyria's relationship with Adrian deepened as they prepared for the arrival of their child. They discussed names, imagined the future, and shared dreams they had never voiced before. Lyria marveled at the way humans could plan for the future while living fully in the present. Adrian taught her patience, understanding, and the quiet power of small, consistent actions. Lyria learned that love was not a grand gesture or a royal decree, but a series of choices made every day, in care, attention, and presence. As the months progressed, Lyria's pregnancy became a symbol of hope not only for herself but for the colony. People admired her courage and resilience. Children looked up to her, seeing a figure who had overcome hardship and embraced life fully. Women in the community shared stories of their own struggles, finding inspiration in Lyria's journey. She became a quiet leader, not through power or command, but through example, empathy, and action. Despite the joy and anticipation, Lyria also experienced fear and uncertainty. Pregnancy was new and unfamiliar to her, and she worried for the safety of her child. She wondered how her home planet would react, whether she would be welcomed or judged. Yet, she faced these fears with courage, drawing strength from Adrian's support and the community she had come to love. Each challenge became an opportunity to grow, each worry a lesson in resilience and hope. Finally, as she approached the later months of her pregnancy, Lyria felt a profound connection to life itself. She understood the miracle of existence in a way that transcended her previous knowledge, a wisdom born not from royal training but from lived experience. She had faced ridicule, fear, and uncertainty, yet she had emerged stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. The child she carried was a living symbol of that journey, a bridge between two worlds and a promise of hope for the future. Lyria's transformation was complete. She was no longer the princess defined by infertility and courtly expectations. She was a woman, a mother-to-be, a leader in her own right. She had discovered the power of love, the beauty of community, and the resilience within herself. And though she did not yet know what challenges awaited upon her return to her home planet, she was ready to face them, carrying not only her child but the strength, wisdom, and courage she had gained in the human world. Lyria's return to her home planet was filled with a mixture of anticipation, fear, and hope. She had spent months among humans, learning, growing, and discovering herself in ways she had never imagined. Now, she was ready to face the world she had once feared, the royal court, her family, and all those who had once mocked her. But she was no longer the same princess. She carried within her not only her own strength, but also the life of a child, a living proof that the impossible could become reality. As Lyria's ship descended into the capital city, she looked down at the familiar sights with a new perspective. The floating towers, the glowing gardens, and the crystal streets were as beautiful as ever, but they no longer held the same power over her. She was no longer seeking validation, nor was she weighed down by fear. Instead, she felt a quiet confidence, a calm awareness that she had survived, grown, and achieved something extraordinary. When the royal advisors learned of her arrival, they rushed to inform the king. Whispers filled the palace halls. The princess is returning. She has been among humans. What will this mean for the kingdom? The court, once dismissive of her inability to bear children, was now on edge. Rumors had reached them, in fragments, but no one expected the truth. Lyria carried a child. The anticipation and tension in the air were palpable as the king prepared to meet his daughter. The throne room was filled with nobles, advisors, and curious onlookers when Lyria entered. She walked confidently, her posture regal but relaxed, her eyes calm and steady. The court, which had once mocked her, now fell silent. They noticed the subtle changes, the way she carried herself, the quiet power emanating from her presence, and the undeniable glow of life within her. She had transformed not through titles or orders, but through experience, courage, and personal growth. The king, initially stern, struggled to maintain his composure. He had expected humiliation or weakness, but what he saw was the opposite. A princess who had embraced life, learned its lessons, and returned stronger than anyone could have imagined. "Lyria," he said, his voice betraying surprise. "You have changed." She met his gaze steadily, without arrogance or apology. "I have learned," she replied simply, "that strength is not only in power, but in patience, compassion, and understanding. I have learned the value of life in ways I could not have known here." When she revealed her pregnancy, the court erupted in shock. Gasps filled the air, whispers of disbelief spread quickly, and many could not comprehend what they were seeing. The infertile princess, long mocked and pitied, was carrying a child, a living testament to her resilience and the unexpected possibilities of life. The nobles who had once ridiculed her found themselves humbled. Some bowed in respect, others stared in stunned silence. Even the king, though proud, could not hide his astonishment. Adrian, standing quietly by her side, earned admiration as well. He had guided her, supported her, and shared in her journey without seeking recognition or power. Now the court saw him not as a simple human, but as a man whose kindness, patience, and love had changed a princess's life. His presence was a reminder that true strength often comes from unexpected sources, and that leadership, wisdom, and courage are not limited to titles or appearances. In the days that followed, Lyria began to share her experiences among humans, with the court. She spoke of the colony, the lessons she had learned, and the relationships that had shaped her understanding of life. Her stories captivated the audience, not because of exotic details or novelty, but because of the humanity, they contained. The court realized that her time away had given her insights and wisdom far beyond what they had expected. Lyria's voice carried authority, not from fear or command, but from truth and experience. Over time, her return sparked a transformation in the palace itself. The court began to reconsider their attitudes toward judgment, expectations, and compassion. They saw that ridicule and hierarchy were not measures of value, and that strength could come from humility, learning, and care. Lyria had not only reclaimed her dignity, but had reshaped the very environment that had once sought to humiliate her. Her child became a symbol of hope and possibility, proof that even the harshest beginnings could lead to extraordinary outcomes. Lyria also took the time to reconnect with her family. She spoke with her parents, sharing her experiences, her struggles, and the lessons she had learned. They listened, sometimes with tears in their eyes, and began to understand that their daughter had grown in ways they could never have planned. Her journey among humans had revealed truths about life, love, and resilience that even the royal tutors had never taught. Through her courage and wisdom, she not only reclaimed her place in the royal family, but also earned their admiration and respect. Finally, the princess prepared to settle into her new life as a mother. She understood that the journey ahead would require patience, care, and courage. But she faced it with confidence, supported by Adrian, guided by her own experiences, and inspired by the lessons she had learned among humans. The return to her home planet was not just a return, it was a triumph, a testament to resilience and a celebration of life's unexpected possibilities. Through her journey, Lyria demonstrated that true strength comes not from birthright, power, or expectation, but from courage, love, and the willingness to embrace life fully. She had transformed herself, reshaped her society's perspective, and created a legacy that would inspire generations to come. Her story was no longer one of mockery or pity. It was a story of hope, determination, and the enduring power of the human heart, even in an alien world. Life after returning to her home planet was both challenging and beautiful. Lyria had faced ridicule, disbelief, and doubt in the past, but now she faced the joy and responsibility of motherhood. Her child, a symbol of love between two worlds, became the center of her life. She nurtured the child with care, combining her knowledge of her alien heritage with the wisdom she had gained from humans. Every day brought new lessons, new joys, and new discoveries. Adrian remained by her side, providing support, guidance, and companionship. Together, they learned the intricacies of parenting in a world that had once seemed rigid and unforgiving. They laughed, stumbled, and celebrated small victories. Their relationship grew stronger, rooted not in royal expectation but in shared experience, trust, and care. The palace, which had once been a place of judgment, now became a home filled with warmth, acceptance, and love. As the child grew, so did Lyria's influence. She became a quiet leader, teaching the court and the people that strength comes from empathy, patience, and understanding. Her experiences among humans allowed her to see the value of every individual, regardless of status, power, or ability. She demonstrated that leadership is not about commanding fear or obedience, but about guiding with care, inspiring trust, and nurturing growth. The child, born of both human and alien heritage, became a bridge between worlds. People marveled at the unique blend of abilities, curiosity, and compassion within the child. Lyria and Adrian taught the child about both cultures, sharing the wisdom of humans and the knowledge of their alien world. They emphasized the importance of kindness, resilience, and understanding, values that had shaped Lyria's journey and would now shape the next generation. Through her parenting, Lyria also healed old wounds. She forgave those who had mocked her, not out of weakness, but out of understanding and strength. She realized that resentment only hinders growth, while forgiveness allows for transformation. Her journey, once marked by humiliation and fear, had led to profound personal growth and the ability to inspire change in others. The palace itself began to change. The court, once rigid and judgmental, started to embrace the lessons Lyria had learned. Nobles and advisors began to value empathy, cooperation, and humility. Her child became a symbol of the new era, a reminder that life, love, and courage could defy expectations and bring hope even in the most unlikely circumstances. Lyria also shared her story with the people beyond the palace. She spoke of her time among humans, the lessons she had learned, and the miracles that had unfolded. Her story inspired others to embrace change, overcome obstacles, and believe in the unexpected possibilities of life. It became a legend, not because of magic or power, but because of courage, resilience, and the enduring capacity for love. In time, Lyria's family embraced the new future. The king, who had once mocked her infertility, came to admire her strength, wisdom, and compassion. The court celebrated her child, not as a political tool or status symbol, but as a living testament to hope, resilience, and the blending of two worlds. Lyria had transformed not only her own life but also the hearts and minds of everyone around her. Finally, Lyria and Adrian found peace. They watched their child grow, explored new adventures, and continued to build a life rooted in love, respect, and shared purpose. Lyria had begun her journey as a princess mocked for what she could not do. She had traveled among humans, discovered strength within herself, and returned as a mother, a leader, and a symbol of hope. Her story reminded everyone that even the cruelest beginnings could lead to extraordinary endings, and that love, patience, and courage are the most powerful forces in any world. Through her life, Lyria proved that the impossible can become possible, that transformation is always within reach, and that the true measure of a person is not in what they lack, but in the courage, love, and resilience they bring to the world. Her legacy would endure, inspiring generations to embrace change, hope, and the unexpected gifts that life offers, no matter how impossible they might seem.